Well, that was quite a long time ago, I must say, but I still have a vivid memory of the final round and after that as well. The final round was tremendously exciting. At that time, it was held in the large hall of Carnegie Hall. And the jury was up in the balcony somewhere, so I didn't quite see them. There was a bit of an audience there, and there were the three finalists, including me, and to play in that hall and with the kind of projection which is needed in that hall was very, very enervating for me. And then when the result came out, I was elated, of course. But not only that, I was very grateful that I became part of the Naumburg, we can call it family, because the Naumburg organization, the Naumburg Foundation, always has had and still has the reputation of being for music, not for show, not for, I don't know, someone who just sort of looks good, whatever. Although I hope I don't look too bad. It was a while ago. I look kind of the same, but a little bit older. Anyway, so it's for music, and its function as a competition is to further the future of classical music. And to become part of that is a very big honor. Well, that's a very easy question, because although I had won a couple of other competitions before in Europe, and I was doing a certain amount of soloistic work, the Naumburg competition really elevated me into the realm of soloists. And for the clarinet, that was something that was almost unheard of at the time. Oh, I have, in a certain sense, a lot of advice, much too much for this very short interview, but I have to say, first of all, that what is most important is to have great musical conviction. And then, of course, you need to practice a lot. That's just to play, you need to practice a lot, in fact. But the musical conviction is what is important, not only for the competition, but for drawing people in so they become supporters of classical music. And this is what we really need today. Oh, well, first of all, what excites me the most is actually playing in front of a live audience, because we've had this terrible time of 2+ years, basically, with almost no live concert life. And I did do things online, and I think that doing stuff online is something which is actually going to continue. I mean, this is, but the difference between being somewhere and imagining that there is actually an audience in front of you, and hoping that people somewhere in the world are actually watching, listening to what you're doing, and actually having the audience there is, well, it's not even a magnitude, it's much greater than a magnitude of difference. And the point is that, first of all, music is, even if you're a soloist, it's a communal enterprise, it's a communal form of art, okay, where you are taking a piece of music and communicating it to an audience, and you get feedback from the audience, which then often will give you even new ideas during the performance. Well, I've played in Weill Hall for a long time. I think I actually gave my debut, we could say. I think 11 years before I won the Naumburg competition. So that's actually even a longer time ago. And at that time it was Carnegie Recital Hall. And then it's gone through changes, whatever. But Weill Hall is a very good combination of being intimate and yet being large enough for a chamber music audience. So I can feel, not only me, but anyone who's performing there can feel that it is both intimate and also public. And that's very important for a performer, to have both of those senses. And it's a kind of hall where you can play with a lot of different color. And for me, because that's one of the things I love about performing, and also about classical music, I should say, the sense of variety that we have in expression and, as I said, in color, that for me, that is very gratifying. There's history behind this also, because I knew Denisov. We became quite a good friend of his, and I was studying at the Moscow Conservatory. This was back in 1975 when I first met him. And at that time, he gave me the score to this trio, which is Ode, it's called. And so I still have the manuscript, and that's what I play from, and I give the players that I play with for the manuscript. And the piece is very intense and, in a way, very sad. It starts again with just kind of murmuring and goes to something which is really like chaos. And then we have a coda, which is both sort of stately and quite sad as it goes away. And I think that captures his personality and also the time, and which is actually quite relevant to the time we're in now, I have to say. And going back to history a bit, after this piece, he also gave me the sonata he wrote for solo clarinet, and he mentioned to me that I was the first performance in Moscow of that piece. I think that's not actually true. It's probably the first performance which he liked, I say. And I'm happy that I sort of made that piece become one of the standards of the clarinet repertoire. And after that, he also wrote very beautiful work. This is actually several years later, actually quite a lot. This was very early 90s. He wrote work for clarinet and piano for me. So this is basically my story about the piece this way. And it's worth hearing because it's the kind of work which in one certain way is very modern this way. In another way, though, it's very, very emotional. So it's the kind of piece where even if you have no background in so-called contemporary music, whatever, it becomes, I think, quite meaningful. Oh, that's easy. They're just wonderful musicians. So there's nothing else to say about that. With Mohammed, I'm playing almost the whole program. In fact, almost the whole program, I would say. And that program involves many different styles of music. And he's not only a great virtuoso, but he is someone who is very aware of different styles of music. And that's great to play with someone like that. And Eduardo, we're playing together the Ode. He's a brilliant percussionist, a wonderful fellow, very creative, and very knowledgeable in contemporary music, in new music. So putting this piece together, which some people could say is rather complicated, in fact was very simple. To answer this question in a kind of short way, a brief way, I should say, this concert is part of the Naumburg Looks Back, or is Looking Back series. But I thought that in a program, we should look both back and forward. And I have a combination of earlier music, let's say, of one of the great works for clarinet and piano, or greatest works for clarinet and piano, that's Brahms' Opus 120, number 2, E-flat Sonata. And that's looking back also because I performed that piece on my first Naumburg recital. Then I have also a transcription of a work by Mendelssohn, which Mendelssohn didn't actually finish at the time, and luckily, though, he didn't throw away. So this was a work which is looking back, but it's also in a way looking forward. So it's a transcription of the restoration of this work, which the great violinist Yehudi Menuhin made this way. And before he actually took a look at it, it had never been played. So it was written in 1838, and I even forget now exactly when Menuhin did his reconstruction, but it probably was in the 1950s or maybe 1960s even, something of that sort. So this was a long period of time where this work was actually completely unknown. And I say looking forward, and that's what this is, kind of looking back and forward, because this is a work which still is not really known by kind of the mainstream audience. And it was written for the violin, but I thought since violinists don't play it, that I should play it and actually make a case for the fact that this is a great work, and it is a work from a period which is actually 1830s, which is sort of lacking a big body of sonata literature, sort of not only for clarinet, but also for violin or cello, let's say, and other instruments too. So that's that particular. And then I have different new pieces, or then some of them are not very new, and pieces which have historical significance, like, for instance, the Mstislav Weinberg Sonata, which he wrote right at the end of the Second World War, and which was a time of great personal tragedy for him, but also because of the end of the war, it was a time of hope. I have to say that hope didn't really follow him after that, but that's another story. And then there are other pieces, especially by Ursula Mamlok. Ursula Mamlok is a wonderful composer who was another friend of mine. And she is someone who actually, not too long after the piece that I'm playing in the recital, Rückblick, she wrote a series of duets for my wife Ayako Oshima and myself. So that was a wonderful little present that she gave us. And she's a composer who I look back on, but I also look to the future, because she is someone, she passed away recently, but should be remembered in the world of music. So I hope to be able to do at least a little bit on my part to further that. And there's also a little work of Julia Perry, someone who I did not know well, but I respected very much. That is a very late work of hers, very, very short work for solo clarinet, which was actually found in manuscript, never published. And finally, there's a work which I've written. And here I look back to much earlier time, let's say, when performers and composers were virtually the same. And I hope that looking forward, that will become more and more the case. So I guess that's it.